Greetings, everyone. Hope all of you are having an absolutely fantastic day. We are back again with Through the Ashes, a DLC for Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous. Yes, I know I am super late on this. I made a video when Owlcat announced the new DLC, Treasure of the Midnight Isles. In that video, I mentioned that I was avoiding Through the Ashes like the plague. This DLC does not allow you to play as the commander, and consequently I felt it was something I wouldn't enjoy. Usually, I strongly prefer DLC that involves the main character of the game. Quite a few of you responded that you enjoyed Through the Ashes and asked me to give it a try. I am always open to feedback from the community, so here are my thoughts, starting with what I liked. While this DLC is set in the same world as Wrath of the Righteous, it feels very different from your main quest. No mythic paths, no promises of greater glory, just relatively regular people trying to survive a horrible situation. To me, it's actually a cool dynamic that distinguishes this content from the regular game. You play as someone unlucky enough to be in the middle of Kenabris during the demon invasion that starts the game. Over time, you connect with other survivors who either just want to get to safety or they want to connect with the resistance at Defender's Heart. You get to create 3 mercenaries and 2 party members join your group. The game art highlights the gnome Sindri, who is your typical chaotic good character, deeply concerned with saving people and being a good citizen. His voice acting is solid, but I didn't find his personality to be particularly unique, so I wasn't very impressed with him. Ricard, on the other hand, is a fantastic character, a chaotic neutral tiefling who has a gruff, old veteran vibe to him. Not only does he have a really distinct personality, but many aspects of his character call back to things you heard about in the original game but didn't get to delve into much. For example, he speaks very glowingly about Erebeth and Anivia Tirabade. I always felt like the main game did a poor job of explaining what they actually do, especially since there's virtually no change to your crusade if either of them dies. Ricard's comments about their impact on the city and the tiefling population overall do a lot to raise their stock before you ever meet them. He's absolutely someone who would fit right in with the base game group. Another thing I like about this game is how desperate the situation feels. You have to fight and scrape for every bit of progression. Weapons, armor, and useful items all have to be searched for, and oftentimes they are behind puzzles or difficult encounters you might be better off skipping. By the way, these puzzles are significantly easier to complete than they were in Inevitable Excess, and none of them are required to complete the main story. There was not a single time where I found them to be deeply frustrating to the point I wished Owlcat had taken them out. The game rewards you for taking things slow and carefully considering whether an encounter is actually worth the expenditure of resources necessary to complete it. Many times you can completely avoid difficult fights by finding shortcuts or using the environment to significantly disable your foes. All of this reinforces that you are not part of an indestructible mythical group. Hammering this home even further is a new civilian system. In addition to your 2 party members, you will encounter civilians who follow your group as you clear certain areas of enemies. These people never fight and are not nearly as sturdy as your main group. Each of them have different personalities and backgrounds that lend them to certain tasks. Sometimes they can help you in the environment with things like clearing debris or pulling up planks blocking an exit. They are even more useful during sequences to move into a new area. So in this DLC, when you move out of a major area into a different part of Kenabris, you'll be confronted with multiple scenarios. These scenarios will ask you to do things like put a lost soul to rest, search for food, or scout for an exit. For some reason, none of your party members are allowed to participate in these tasks, so it strictly falls on the survivors in your group. These scenarios are extremely dangerous, especially if you ask a survivor to complete a task they aren't particularly skilled in. Failure can mean injury, disease, or even death. You can determine the health of a survivor by speaking with them. There are 3 stages of disease they can experience, and if the issue lingers too long, at the 3rd stage, the survivor will die, robbing you of not only their skills, but also the quests related to them that you could get experience for completing. XP is not given for defeating enemies, instead it is related to story progression, quest completion, and reaching specific areas. It took me 6 hours to complete the DLC on normal, and by the end I was level 5, so experience points are very limited. Figuring out how to best use survivors and keep them all healthy is an important part of the DLC, and I think it works very well. Quick note before we get into what I didn't like about the game. If you enjoyed this video, I would really appreciate you hitting the like button. This information tells me which content the channel is enjoying and helps my videos spread to more people. I really appreciate all of the support. There's two things I don't like about this game. One of them is definitely an issue with the DLC, and the other is more so a personal problem. First issue is that the ending is terrible. There's kind of a pre-ending, I guess, when you finally reach Defender's Heart, and that is handled very well. But the actual ending of the DLC is completely unearned, leaves more questions than answers, and honestly caps a decent experience on a sour note for no reason. In my opinion, they could have just hinted at more things to come, left that entire part out, and the DLC would have benefited from the change. The second, more personal issue is that I am just not a fan of survival games, which is definitely what this is. I really enjoy the survivor's mechanic, but the idea of spending hours scrounging for everything and treating every combat encounter like a mortal threat to my group just isn't a playstyle I particularly enjoy. I definitely see the appeal, and honestly I am glad that I played this because it's better than Inevitable Excess, but it's still not my personal cup of tea. That wraps up my thoughts on Through the Ashes. Some really interesting new mechanics that differentiate this content from the main game and make it a worthy entry into the series. I am now even more excited to see what Owlcat has in store for us with Treasures of the Midnight Isles. Hope all of you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave me a like, share this content, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I will see you all in the next video. Take care.